Hello and welcome to the New World Review. I'm Grand Line Waifu and I have a hot fortune to tell, or at least one I want to pick apart as we look at episodes 50 and 51 of Hunter x Hunter. Everything has sort of come to a head and everything's pretty intense, so strap in, prepare for springs to be pulled, and my life, because you all seem to have seen this before, I don't know, to never be the same again. Y'all, I get names right in this episode. I do. I promise. It'll take some tries, but you might hear a certain dead character's name said correctly. Episode 50. Gon. Bakaga! We weren't, I hope, any of us surprised to see Gon reacting to Hisoka being in the room with the rest of the spiders. Then he was saved by actually seeing Shizuku, who I wonder why she has such a poor memory. The arm wrestling that occurred during this episode was a beautiful scene and set up a lot of premises. It made really clear the idea that the Phantom Troupe really do more than just work together. They care about each other too, and nothing made that more clear than Nobunaga. I get names right in this episode. I do. Nobunaga deciding to arm wrestle Gon over and over again in a form of torture. For his hand to be bleeding, he must either have been arm wrestling for a long time or every bone in his hand must be broken. Or both. Most likely both. When he finally won, as I suspected would happen, it made perfect sense to me that Nobunaga would want to recruit him to the Phantom Troupe, and honestly, if the Phantom Troupe had found him before Kurapika and Leorio had, I wouldn't at all have been surprised if he'd said yes and joined immediately. Gon has a code of honor very similar to the Phantom Troupe. It's just that he happens to be aligned with the other side. As soon as Nobunaga said Gon was like Uvogin, I understood entirely who Uvogin was, and I understood a little more about who Gon was too. The cute kiss on the cheek from a few episodes ago, the inability to take defeat, the sociopathic tendencies, they're all exactly what this little boy is growing into. He's even an enhancer. And it could just as well have been Uvogin talking to Nobunaga about the death of someone he cared about, because that's exactly what he would have done had any of the other troop members been hurt. I find it odd that becoming a member of the troop is something that can be forced. Surely once Chrollo returned, the result would be, hey, do you want to join the troop? Oh wait, hang on, he never speaks out loud. Hey, do you want to join the troop? Wait, it's even lower than that. Hey, do you want to join the troop? What kind of powers does Chrollo have? Why is he the leader? What makes his lure so powerful? All we've seen is him looking down the lens at us. How does he keep them in line? Speaking of keeping them in line, let's discuss the coin for a moment, please. The idea that as part of their rules they must flip a coin to make decisions is a really interesting one, partially because they all adhere to it and don't step outside that. The intensity of the tension in the room when I get names right in this episode. I do. I hate names. The intensity of the tension in the room when Nobunaga decided he wanted to try to recruit the boys was beautifully animated, and I wonder whether they're all just really good at coin tricks at this point. Tricks, beyond literally placing us between the legs of Breasty McGee, which seems unnecessary and absurd. It does seem interesting how much attention the rest of the group is willing to place on Pakunoda. Touching to read memories is an interesting skill, and the fact that Killua picked up on it without it becoming immediately important that he knew was satisfying, actually. I'd just like to briefly note that Melody wasn't on the troop's hunting list, so she is perfectly safe from them, unless she says something about Kurapika herself. We'll see, I guess, but I can't see her doing that. The escape from Nobunaga was a great way to show that only one of the two boys can be fools at a time, and reminded us that Killua is dealing with some pretty intense trauma. I'm not entirely sure why Illumi came back to haunt Killua beyond being trapped. I wonder whether he sleeps with the lights on, because to be in the dark is to end up in the dark pits of Illumi's Nen, or Ren. Or N. I'm so confused by these. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm glad the entire 20-minute segue of an episode that was their introduction to collecting was of some use despite it being tiny. It was great in a way that they had this method of communication, and you know what? It was nice that this method of communication was accessible to us because that had been foreshadowed. But I still don't feel the previous episode was worth what we got from it. Is Illumi entirely in Killua's head? Telling Killua he can't win is the best reverse psychology ever for a boy who's pumped up on his own abilities but still forgetting to do some fairly basic things. What prompts him to snap out of it? It's really interesting that he didn't have that reaction with Hisoka. He simply became filled with dread and fear. Having a drop of blood drawn might be a trigger for him to end up there, but he wasn't in the mindset of Illumi until they were trapped in a small room and waiting. Until the pressure of having to join the troop began to mount? I'll have to think about that some more, because the reason he went there is really interesting. We know that he fully snapped out of it because of Gon, though. Gon and his willingness to die for a friend he believes in. The relationship the two have is almost two halves of the same coin, two halves of the same person, and that's scary, but also really cool. The fact that Gon could explicitly note exactly how their relationship works, there's a lot about how they care for each other and about the fact that they recognize their foolishness. Another theme that I'll go into at some point with this series, I think, is the love-hate push-pull of relationships. Not necessarily loving and hating the same person, but the way that relationships are presented, which I find particularly interesting, especially when we think about how they motivate every interaction in the show. Either way, these kids are finally seriously hunting for Kurapika, so let's take a look at episode 51. Welp. Things have escalated quickly. Sneaky Chrollo looking exactly like a really smooth, suave ladies' man for a Neon. Why? This kid has just caused an absolute massacre, and by staying away from his fortune, she's managed to ensure that it will happen. Or at least it will happen in some way, shape, or form. Fortunes are an interesting thing, but I'm going to assume by this point that we've been given all the information to figure it out. Let's talk through it a bit before we discuss other things, because I love a bit of poetry and I really enjoy this.
The calendar loses a precious component.
We saw last episode how much Uvogin was missed and would be missed by the whole troop. The fact that Chrollo even gives the massacre to him is a really important point to that, and really cool, actually. I really enjoyed that.
The remaining months gather to mourn.
So this is interesting. There are 13 Phantom Troopers, but technically, Hisoka isn't one of them. So there are 12 or 11 without Uvogin, but including Chrollo. Does this mean that each member of the troop relates to a month in some way? That's something I'm going to have to consider. And I'm really glad that I have things to consider. We know there are 12, not 8 members of the Phantom Troop. Maybe that's for a reason. It probably is, but who knows? I mean, I don't. And that's kind of, fortunes. You get some of the information, but not all of the information. The mourners play a melody. This line is pretty clear and literal, and something that I could imagine Chrollo was going to do anyway, given his decision to stay to deal with Kurapika.
While the 11th moon quietly rises.
Okay, now this one I don't know about. Does this mean Chrollo himself? Does it refer to Hisoka? Does it refer to Kurapika? What I know is that it's not just that it's November. That seems odd and unnecessary. Then again, when Kurapika and Uvogin fought, there was a full moon. This one, I'm not sure about. Does it mean that Chrollo will win, maybe? I mean, it would be the end of a series real fast. Like, that would end the series pretty quickly if all of the protagonists are dead.
The chrysanthemum withers and falls to lie on the ground beside bloody scarlet eyes.
I have no idea what this means. Chrysanthemums are flowers, I know that much. Bloody scarlet eyes could be referring to Kurapika losing his eyes, or to Kurapika's eyes simply turning red. I can't imagine they won't turn red when he's dealing with any member of the troop, so maybe Kurapika and Chrollo will fight to the death and simply both die. That's an option.
You will remain supreme even after losing half your limbs.
So he's going to lose half of the Phantom Troop, but still succeed in whatever it is he's trying to do. If what he's trying to do is kill Kurapika, then...
Enjoy the interlude, seek out new allies, east is the direction to go.
This isn't poetry. This is just, literally leaning out of a car window and going, "Hey mate, where am I supposed to go?" These lines don't seem to be helpful to our plucky teenagers who will be seeking to kill him with great finality, but, maybe.
You will find one who awaits you, but who?
Anyway, I like fortunes. I like fortune telling. It's fun. I'm always interested to see how it's twisted and turned. Anyway, good job, Neon. She walked off, immediately got caught, and happily gave a fortune to someone she didn't know who was definitely going to want to massacre her family and will probably draw the entire Zoldyck family into vengeance once Farm Boy arrives. Don't think I didn't notice Papa Zoldyck's there. It's just that so many other things happened, my brain skimmed the importance of it. Back to the immediate issue. What do we say about the fact that Neon's still alive? Chrollo knows he could return to her at any point and ask for another fortune, probably. Why kill a cow that could keep on giving? I'm not saying she's a cow, but this kid, if you keep the Nostrads alive for now, is a fantastic resource. Why fight with that? Also, who is the ghost Chrollo was talking about? Who is it he wants to bring back the dead? Is it the same as Melody? Is it the same as Melody? Is that a thing? Is that what we're saying? The classical music at the end, speaking of Melody, the classical music at the end of the episode was frankly beautiful. While it can become cheesy, I really enjoy the combination of classical music and violence. Classical music can so often be violent, as evidenced by his fortune advising him of Melody and the Requiem for the Dead. At least we know that for a short time we still have a Melody, which is good. Let's keep hold of what lightness we can, even if she's drenched in the darkness of this series. The repeated actions of the troupe, the sheer fun of it all in their way they use their abilities is devastating. Seeing them play with people and desecrate everything about them as they die was almost numbing. It happened so much, and with those strings sitting under it, it really pushed us into the territory of knowing that we're not supposed to dwell on any of it. It's supposed to be an outcome, not a focus. We've already had the focus on violence as shown by Chrollo pulling a pen out of someone's head, and we'd had the focus on avoiding violence as shown by Kurapika simply putting a clean knife to someone's throat. It was an interesting artistic choice, that one, to have the clean, bright knife Kurapika had, not even his standard weapon, then to compare with Chrollo's non-standard weapon of a pen. It really showed, now that I think about it, the fact that both characters are hideously dangerous with essentially mundane tools. No, a knife is not entirely mundane, but the fact that he was drawn holding it with his chained hand shows his restraint in that moment. It's remarkable that Hisoka didn't help at all, or at least didn't get involved. Does that mean he has a heart, or that he's decided it's not worth it? He's kind of like a cat. Half the time what he's doing is to make others feel good, for example, when he gave Gon some training before leaving. And other times he's deliberately pushing people off tables, like that time he pushed Kurapika off a table. Sorry, that didn't happen, but he did make Killua bleed a drop of blood, just like an angry cat claw. I'm sure the metaphor works, I'm just not in the best position right now to deliver it the way the Phantom Troop delivered a hardcore mess to York New. That music, though, continuing straight to the end of the entire episode, was fairly brutal because it all tied in so well. They're all going to be dragged in some way. Even Gon's dad? Wait, even Gon's dad? Maybe. Who knows? I don't, yet. And that's why we finish up here, because that's it from me. I want to watch more. If you enjoyed this mild delve into this really, really big episode, there are other things that you might like to see here and here. Hit the like, dislike, and or subscribe button, and I found out recently that there's a bell. Hit the bell and be cat like our friend Hisoka, and I'll see you next time.